Today we're going to be looking at how to turn our steampunk design into a resolved work using colour washes. If you haven't already watched my video on how to use pantry items to make colour washes at home, please watch that first. So what I'm using here on these pieces is I'm using two items. I'm using coffee, which I'm here, you can see me using now, and the other red one is a freeze-dried berry, which I've turned into a powder and dissolved in a little bit of hot water. So I've got my design from my original collage and I've transferred that onto a paper bag, cartridge paper and photocopy paper. Different surfaces will work differently with the paint that you use or the watercolours that you use. This first one that I'm working on is the photocopy paper, and I noticed after a little while that the berry I was using actually went purple, so it lost that really nice pink red colour. So I think this was because of the high acidity of the photocopy paper. It didn't do the same thing on the cartridge paper, it stayed quite pink. So do just experiment on your different surfaces first up. Now you can see here that I'm applying the colour with both a brush. If you don't have a brush, I'm just using a cotton tip, or you can use a piece of tissue wrapped around a pencil as well. So I've used coffee in the background, I've used my berries on my steampunk elements in my background, and I also then mixed the two of them together to make it slightly darker for my bird. This one I'm working on my flower bag. I really like the texture of this, and so what I decided to do was to keep the berry colour on the bird itself. I'm using the coffee in my background, and I'm actually going to keep the steampunk elements just in graphite pencil itself to give them that kind of metallic look that I'm going for. So just apply your colour lightly in different areas, and then you're going to add your value over the top of that. So you can see here I'm just starting off with pencil. So I'm using graphite pencil on this one, and I'm just building up those layers. So I'm just filling in some mid-tone or light tone in my area first, and then I'm adding in my shadows and darkness in areas. I'm also adding some textural marks in as I go, and you'll see that I started with the eye area. As I've always said to you, make sure that those eyes look realistic. Make sure you've got that highlight in those eyes, because that's what gives your bird life. As I'm moving into the steampunk elements, I'm wanting it to look metallic. So I'm actually using a cotton tip, you can use a tissue, to smudge my graphite pencil around to give it kind of that metallic look. You'll also notice that I'm using an eraser to take away highlights. It's really important to do that, because what happens when you're smudging is you run into this danger zone of just staying in the mid values of greys. You want lightness in there, you want darkness, you need that contrast. So use your eraser to erase back areas, and use your pencil or your graphite pencil or colour pencil to add in the darker values. So make sure you've got that wide range of light through to dark in your piece. I'm working on the actual animal part, so the bird part here, and this is where I added my colour washes underneath. So it's important that you just work straight over the top of those colour washes so that it's actually just adding colour underneath your shading that you're doing with your pencil. Make sure that you do textural marks, so you still want the animal to have feathery marks, furry marks, or whatever, you know, textural qualities it is that you're creating of the animal. For those of you who've got steampunk elements in your background, work into these as well. You don't have to resolve your background as much as your animal, which is the focus of your piece, but adding some colour washes into your background, adding some value and shading into your background will bring it together as a more cohesive piece as well. If you don't have steampunk elements in the background, at least ground your animal. So unless it's a bird flying, what is it standing on? Give it some shadow underneath. On the ground, just to ground it so it's not floating in the middle of nowhere. Keep working through, add as much value or shading into your background as you like. You can leave some areas a bit more unfinished, which will give it a bit more interest to look at as well. So once you think that you have finished your piece, just take a final look at it and go back in and add some darker values in there. Remember, you need light lights, you need dark darks and blacks as well. So think about where your darkest shadows would be, tighten up some lines, and you can use your darkest pencil to add those dark lines in and to, neaten up edges and to sharpen up edges. And then just use your eraser as well to bring back some highlights into some areas as well. Looking forward to seeing your finished results.